Mr. Robbie Bennett, welcome back.
It's good to see you, and it's good to be back.
I had to have you back on because people think it's been so long since you've been in a podcast that we're not friends anymore, that I don't like it.
We fell out, did we?
We fell out, yeah, because we were just trying to do the math there. It's now March. Oh, actually, I think it's next week will mark 3 years since the start of the whole shall not be named lockdowns, COVID.
Oh, yeah. Let's not talk about that.
No, we just got a big sticker on this episode now from Spotify, but
right.
yeah, that's 3. So
no listens now.
No, 0 listens. So I think it was before that we did our last episode together, which was our second episode on the podcast. But we've seen each other many times.
Oh, of course, yeah. We have many deep conversations about all sorts, yeah.
Yeah, so which is why I have to be careful today, because already you've only been in here for 30 minutes and we've gone off on wild tangents. So anybody who's not familiar with Robbie, go back and listen to any one of the previous 2 episodes. They're both absolutely excellent. But a pleasure and an honour to have you back in here today, because you're going to deliver some more knowledge bombs.
No, I'm really happy to be back. So thanks for the invite.
You're very welcome. So let's just dive straight into this, right? Because I know this is a very, very... I'm going to press go on my timer here as well, so in case I forget. Stress. Today's all about stress. And I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to give me some answers, because you're full of wisdom here on these kind of topics. But the main areas I want to cover with people is, because everyone knows what stress is.
Do they know what stress is?
No, this is why I'm doing, if anyone can see I'm doing the quotes here. Everybody knows the stress. Everyone's familiar with the word stress, but I think for many different people it means many different things. And what I said to you before we rolled here is, you were probably one of the first people I ever heard when I asked you. We had just met years ago and I was asking you, like, what do you do with your clients? What do you talk to them about? What does a screening process look like? What are the areas you touch on? Most people say to me, sleep, nutrition, hydration. And you said sleep, nutrition, hydration, a litany of other things, and then stress. And then you went into stress and you spoke about people's relationships with each other and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, very interesting to hear somebody in the health industry actually talk about that. So you had me hooked straight away. So obviously it's something that you incorporate into how you work with your clients. It's something that's a major, major contributor to health, how we feel, how we survive, how we live, our physiology, etc. So my first question for you, Mr. Robbie Bennett, what is stress?
So when you think about stress, and I asked the audience, tell me what stress is. A lot of the time you'll give me an example of a stress. You're not going to tell me what the definition of stress actually is. So you might say, it might be, work, or it might be my bosses, shouting down my neck, or it might be finances, or whatever it is. But they're all examples. Stress, the definition is really anything that takes the body out of homeostasis. Anything. So homeostasis is the body's optimal blood pressure, blood sugar, heart rate, just to keep everything running smoothly. So anything that, can raise your sugars, your cortisol, your heart rate, or just take it out of its kind of flow-like state can be a stress. Now, people will say, oh, cortisol stress. So cortisol is typically called the stress hormone. But it's not really the stress hormone. It's the response to stress hormone. Because, for instance, if, let's say, I throw my bottle of water at you right now, okay, it's not the object being thrown at you you're going to have a response to that. And that will be a chemical response with the cortisol within your body. And the reason that happens is it's an adaptive response to get you back to homeostasis as fast as possible. Now, when we say that, so people associate cortisol with being a bad thing. Cortisol is amazing, and it's the body's physiological response to get you back to that normal. But if we have sustained levels of that stress, it can now turn into a bad thing. We want our fight or flight or our freeze response, then we want it back down into that homeostasis, because it's meant to be an adaptive response. It's not meant to be a sustained chronic response.
Okay. So a couple of questions straight away. I'm going to dive in there. So when people say, I feel stressed, what they're actually saying is, I feel some physiological responses to a trigger.
You could say, I feel a physiological response to my environment right now.
And that could be high heart rate, high blood pressure, flushing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but why? Why are they experiencing that?
Okay.
Exactly. So now we need to go into, what are the types of stressors that we can experience as well?
Yeah. And something else you said there before we go into the type of stress was, sometimes that stress could be a positive thing Is it eustress they call it? Is it eustress is good stress? EU stress?
So there's good stress, tolerable stress they call it, and then bad stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, you mentioned cortisol in the morning. That type of stress is good because it's bringing you from a sedated state back to a ready to go state. Would that be fair enough to say? It's kind of waking you up. So it's not bringing you down from a high level to a low level. It's bringing you from a low level back to that.
Yeah, so basically, cortisol, like I said, is your stress hormone, but it's also a hormone that gives you a bit of a charge and energy. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. We want our cortisol generally quite high in the morning because that's what gets you out of bed in the morning, gives you a bit of energy, a bit of oomph. But then as the day goes on, you want those levels to ideally descend down so we can induce high quality sleep, relaxation, and restoration. But due to various environmental factors, we have probably sustained levels of stress throughout the day, or like even inverted cortisol curves where we've got low in the morning where we're bottomed out, and then we're wired but also tired in the evening where we know we're exhausted but we just can't fall asleep. And there's various reasons for that, which could be poor nutrition, lifestyle, poor light exposure, or inadequate, true blue light exposure from outside the sun and so on.
Caffeine abuse.
Caffeine abuse. Well, think about it. Caffeine is the most widely consumed drug on the planet. And I don't use the word drug as a negative, but it is a drug. So we can use that for a positive. Caffeine is an amazing performance enhancer. But you look at the majority of the population and they use that for a crutch because they're incredibly fatigued. And what caffeine can do is it can help give you a false energy in the morning because it can simulate glucocorticoids or cortisol, so you get that stress response. So it can give people that oomph in the morning. But if you need a coffee in the morning to get out of bed or to get going and go to work, you really need to evaluate the 24 hours prior to that, because what is going on that you are so exhausted after you should have had 6, 7, 8, even 9 hours of sleep. That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. I'll rob a line. Chris Williamson saying this about Alex Hormozy a lot lately, and he says if you now rely on something like caffeine, it has stopped conferring a benefit.
Totally, it's a crutch now.
It's a crutch. It's not an ergonomic aid. For example, you like a coffee, I like a coffee, but I'm very careful that I'm not just using it to paper over cracks. If I'm exhausted, I'm not like, I need a coffee. I'm like, why the hell am I so exhausted? And
I love coffee just as much as the other person. I see a lot of benefits in coffee. One is the social benefit. A lot of people will go for, and so a lot of people will go for coffee because they want to spend time with their friend, their partner, or just someone that they get a lot of energy from and energizes them. So I see no issue with that. But it's when you're using coffee and it's having a negative impact on your quality of life, you need to reevaluate things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, sorry, sidetracked you there anyway. So we were talking about the types of stress then.
Yeah, so there's various different types of stress. And how I think about it is, if I had a big bucket in front of me and I had a hose or a bottle of water here and I just start pouring the water or the hose into the bucket and I start filling it up, we have something called allostatic load. Allostatic load. And essentially that's just a fancy word for meaning your total stress, or all the stress that goes within that stress bucket. And if you imagine that bucket, stress might be financial, so I'll pour in a bit of water. It might be chemical, where I'm drinking alcohol. There might be environmental, I'm not getting enough vitamin D, so I keep adding in stress. And that's your total allostatic load. But you're going to get stress from various different points. The first way you can get stressed would be chemical. Chemical can be foods, because foods are chemicals. So for instance, we've got our macronutrients, our protein, fats, our carbohydrates. But what if, for instance, we're not breaking down our food? Could that be a chemical stress on our body? Because now we don't have free-form amino acids, short-chain fatty acids, or simple sugars going into our gut. We now have macromolecules, which we can't digest and break down, causing gastrointestinal issues. So that's a chemical stress. Another chemical stress could be if you're a mechanic and you're working on cars all the time. You've got oil on your hands or fumes, and you're absorbing that through the skin because the skin is our largest organ, or we're inhaling fumes in the air. That can be a chemical stress to our body. Drinking alcohol, drugs, all of these things are all various chemical stressors. That's the main thing from that perspective. Even simply not drinking high quality water, like simply having a filtered tap in your house. will be literally the basics. They're going to have low quality or low grade, not quality, low grade stressors.
Okay, yeah.
So that's where I would start with the chemical aspect of things.
It's interesting because I know we're going to go through all the different types of stress here, but already we've strayed away from what the traditional view of stress is. It's this ethereal force stress. There's a stress everywhere. I'm so stressed right now.
I'm stressed out.
Yeah, but that is a form of stress. And I know we'll talk about exercise at some point in this as well, but like all these things that we might not necessarily associate with stress, they fall into this category. And that allostatic load is a great way of looking at it. That bucket is getting filled from so many angles.
Totally. And a lot of the time when I work with clients on a one-to-one basis, we have a massive whiteboard in our gyms. So
it's very intimidating.
So what I'll say is with my whiteboard marker, I'll ask them, what stresses you out? I go, can you name me 5 things? Can you name me 10? Can you name me 20? And we write down a few things. And I go, okay, that's all the stuff you're adding into your stress bucket. Now, what do you do to unwind, to de-stress?
Yeah.
Go to the gym. Well, that's actually a stress. I know it's a good stress, can be, but it's a stress. I watch Netflix. What time are you watching? Probably 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning. It can be possibly under stress. So a lot of time people can't actually name things
that they do to empty the bucket.
So we should at least have a 1-to-1 ratio of, for everything that stresses you out, we should have enough things to unwind. And we can talk about that later on as well, because we haven't even gotten through the other forms of stress.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something for the listeners to consider. What do you do to actually unwind?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's keep, because I know how many is there in total,
There's around 6 or 7, depending on perspective. Yeah.
Let's keep going.
So first one we obviously talked about was chemical stress. The second one will be physical stress. So if I said to you, what's a physical stress? What's the example that you probably give me?
That I would give you?
Yeah.
I would say exercise.
Exercise.
Yeah.
So exercise is massively beneficial. We talk about muscle being the organ of longevity. Resistance training helps build muscle, so it can be associated with better quality of life and all these things. But it's still a stress at the end of the day. Owen Lacey says this all the time at a lot of his courses.
Who's that?
Yeah, just some influencer. Yeah, check him out.
Instagram.
Yeah. But nobody builds muscle in the gym. Nobody.
Okay.
You stress your body out in the gym. Your blood pressure goes up. Your heart rate goes up. Your stress hormones go up. It's the gym, working out is simply a stress.
Yeah.
You need to adapt to that stress. And if you adapt to that stress adequately, you get stronger, you get bigger, you get leaner. You get the adaptation that you subject to your body. There's a principle of training, said principle. Specific adaptations to impose demand. Your body absolutely hates stress, physical stress specifically, because if you stress it out, I really don't like that. And what it does is it ideally adapts to it, given you've given it enough time to recover, because it does not want that to happen again.
It wants it to be easier the next time, yeah.
Yeah. So an example might be the very first time you put an empty barbell on your back and you do 1 or 2 reps, you're like, oh my God, that's crushing my neck. My legs are on fire, they're like jelly. Just did 4 sets of 10. The next day, it's a little bit easier. So what we need to do is obviously we need to progressively overload that way. But that's one example of a physical stress in the body. But again, positive, giving it enough time for recovery. But there can be also negative forms of physical stress as well when we're not giving it enough time to actually recover, because now we're going to have sustained stress. But also other forms could be, let's say, physical abuse, for instance.
Mm.
And not to go obviously too down a rabbit hole, but physical stress or being abused can have massive negative impact on the body as well, which people do not consider. Well, some people may, but that's definitely an avenue to consider as well and look at.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify for some people who might be listening, it's not just adding too many workouts into a week. If you have a really busy day at work, and like you said, then you go to the gym, that's all stress. So it's not just you've done too much exercise this week. It's that the exercise might not necessarily, it might be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the overall stress level, the overall, what it was,
allostatic load.
Allostatic load, yeah.
Totally. So you just said there, like, oh, it's not the workout essentially, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. So everything else. So we need to look at that stress bucket. We just threw the workout in on top of that, and we just haven't got the ability to recover because we're so stressed out. So that's definitely something we need to consider. So you need to unwind, to take a few steps back and go, okay, well, what else am I doing?
Yeah.
Totally.
And like I always like to think about this in terms of practical things as well. It could be a simple case of if you're having a whopper week and you're stressed out and you like to go for a run, instead of going for the run, it's not saying do nothing. It could just be a yoga session or a movement session or something that moves the body but doesn't add that massive extra level of load or stress and force that adaptation in the body.
But even we've said stress so many
Stress.
times so far.
It's lost meaning for me now.
That word has, a negative association to it. Stress can be so beneficial. When we think of, okay, what hormone is associated with building the most amount of muscle in the gym? We'll talk a lot of time about testosterone builds muscle. Yes, it does. But we need to have sustained levels. Growth hormone can help as well. But like, we're going to have massive acute fluctuations in hormones throughout training. One of the biggest hormones that's associated with building muscle and adaptation, cortisol. Cortisol doesn't build muscle. However, if you look at cortisol levels during a workout, you're going to see massive high levels.
So triggering that stress response.
It's triggering the stress response for the body to then say, oh shit, we don't like this. We got to do something, because Dan's going to just keep having us squatting week after week. At least let's build a bit more muscle on the quads, the glutes. So if he does this again, it's just not going to be as taxing, and it's going to be a little bit easier to get back to homeostasis.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So the body really does what you want it to do, provided you give it the right environment to do so.
And provided you understand it as well.
Yeah.
It really is about understanding
But
it.
a lot of people just train too frequently, with too much volume, with too much intensity. And if you're training 6-7 days a week, you're not giving your body enough time to recover. Either you're not giving it enough time to recover, or you're not training with any intensity to actually cause adaptation.
Yeah. And I'll add that this is aimed at like average Joe here. If you're an elite athlete and the rest of your day is dedicated to recovery and rest, you can train 6 or 7 times a week. That's fine. But you're
It's still challenging. I would argue that now. Yeah. There might be some substances in there to help you out.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah, but you're managing all the rest of the bucket, because you're probably not working a job. You're probably not dealing with other stresses. Your nutrition's probably taken care of, etc., etc. So you're draining that bucket in other ways, or you're not feeling
totally. And actually, I joked there about other substances, but like, without going on a different tangent, like anabolic steroids, they don't build muscle.
Yeah.
They just cause you to adapt to the stress quicker.
Yeah.
So, it helps you to adapt to stress quicker as well. Good quality sleep, hydration, good nutrition. Now, okay, they're not
steroids
on par. Yeah. But they just help you recover faster.
Yeah.
They don't create...
You still got to do the work.
Olympic athletes, they don't create gold medalists. They just allow them to recover a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Whether you're for or against them.
Yeah. That's an interesting conversation. We'll do another one on that.
Yeah.
So we've got chemical stress, we've got physical stress.
Yeah, and now next up we've got environmental stress. So environmental stress can be being around, that energy vampire. We all have one in our life, toxic people. So that's part of our environment, but also it can be where we live, for instance, where we work. So, that chemical stress could be working as a mechanic, but now it's also an environmental stress because we're there all the time.
Yeah.
It can be living in Ireland. So a lot of our listeners, I presume, are going to be from Ireland, but I don't know if you know this, but we're probably not going to get adequate sunlight for about 6 months of the year, which would probably result in low vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
So that's an environmental stress. What about, for instance, the environment could be the quality of our beef or the quality of our fish and so on. So these are factors to consider, because if there is any environmental stressors, we need to find out ways to objectively and subjectively measure them.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And this kind of, and I know we will cover it at the end, but this is where the conversation starts to get interesting, because we're talking about environmental stress. Most of us aren't going to move. But I don't think it's about just eliminating the environmental stress.
No,
it's about understanding it and then mitigating it whatever way you can. So, for example, it might be getting out for a 20-minute walk in the morning time, even if the sun isn't out. But if you're doing that consistently enough, that might be enough to help with your vitamin D levels. Or then you'll understand that maybe supplementation is potentially an option.
Yes, exactly. Like, this is not to create fear. It's to create awareness and areas of opportunity.
Yeah.
Not the time, my client, I always say to them, if they have their blood test looks poor, or they get a bad result on, let's say, an omega-3 index or vitamin D, I go, this looks amazing, because now we've got area of opportunity. We've got a lot of area of opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'll say to them, oh, this is one of the reasons we feel so poor. So, area of opportunity to improve things.
Yeah.
So you should always look at, okay, well, what can I do with this information?
Yeah.
And how can I go forward to improve my quality of life from that?
Yeah.
But we've got chemical, physical, environmental. And the next one will be genetic stress.
God damn it, Dad.
Yeah, there are genetics. So unfortunately, we can't change our genetics.
Not yet.
Yeah. Well, we're getting there. Yeah. So we've got our genes, which is our genotype, and then we've also got our phenotype. And it's the interaction between our genes and our environment that's super important, because we have so much that we can change, not our genes, but we can change the direction things are going because of our nutrition, our sleep, our stress, our hydration, our sunlight exposure, our light exposure, our dark exposure. People don't think about that as well. Like vitamin D is getting a lot of talk right now because it's the quote unquote sunlight hormone. Well, and we all need to get outside. You see it all over the internet. Get outside, expose the body to however many minutes of sunlight a day. Well, what about exposing the body to complete darkness? So, that's a factor as well. But when we look at genetic stressors, we can have certain gene polymorphisms, with poly meaning many, morphic meaning obviously a change. So many changes in a gene that predispose us to certain deficiencies or certain, illnesses and so on. So you've got genes that predispose and you've got genes that predetermine.
Okay.
So predetermined means if you have a certain gene, ain't shit you can do about it, you're going to get that disease. Okay. That only equates for around 1% to 2% of the genes.
That was going to be my question next, because a lot of people say, oh, it's my genetics.
Yeah.
So it's 1% to 2%.
Yeah.
Most
very,
of it's
very low. Maybe at most 5%.
that are predetermined.
Predetermined.
Yeah.
The rest are predisposed, meaning, all my family have diabetes, so I'm going to be a diabetic.
Yeah.
You are at much higher likelihood because of a lot of the lifestyle factors, possibly, and obviously the genetics.
Yeah.
But it doesn't predetermine your direction of life. You can have an influence over that through your lifestyle, your phenotype, what you do with your genes.
Okay.
There's a saying, I think it is, genetics load the gun, your lifestyle pulls the trigger. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we look at, let's say, for instance, vitamin D, there's a mutation called the VDR, vitamin D receptor mutation. And if you imagine, let's say, the River Liffey as our bloodstream, for instance, and we've got loads of boats floating along the Liffey, and then they dock, and then passengers get off the boats. All those boats are vitamin D floating around the bloodstream. But what happens if the boats can't dock appropriately? That's the vitamin D receptor. So you can have mutations in that receptor that don't allow vitamin D to do its role within the body, which can cause, let's say, the most basic level, low vitamin D would be low bone mineral density, or it can have an impact on sugars. It can have an impact on your immune system and so on. And then we look at vitamin D because it's so interlinked to your immune system, autoimmune disease, type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's, Crohn's, celiac disease, ulcerative colitis. Now, we can kind of look at another piece of the puzzle that may have pushed them the direction for that disease or illness.
Yeah.
And so another one, where we're on that topic of genetic stress, the MTHFR mutation. So some people call it the motherfucker mutation.
Is that what it sounds like in my head? Yeah.
Which, oh my God, do I remember this? So methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. Now say that twice.
Fair play to you, man.
Yeah. So in that word there, we have folate and then reductase.
Okay.
Anything ending in ase is an enzyme.
Okay.
So essentially what it does is it changes the inactive form of folate to the active form. So we should know about folic acid or folate because you see it in a lot of B vitamins.
Yeah.
So important for pregnancy.
Iron. Is it linked with iron?
It can be, yeah, to some extent. But pregnancy, mood disorders, cleft palate, I think can be associated to spinal defects and stuff like that, especially during pregnancy. But that's why a lot of the time pregnant mothers are recommended folic acid.
Yeah, okay.
Now, folic acid is not the same as folate. I'm going off a bit of a tangent now. But what happens is you can't, with that, if you've got that mutation, your ability to change that inactive form to the active form is impaired. So it might only change 40% of what it should over. Whether if you didn't have the gene mutation, you'd convert 100% of it over.
Okay.
So it's not that, again, it's predetermining anything, but it might mean you're leaning towards other tendencies or other risk factors.
Yeah, okay. And is there a way to test for these mutations?
Oh, yeah, of course.
SNPs and stuff?
Yeah, genetic testing has been around for the last 15, 20, 25 years now. So you can go get your genetic tested. The issue is you're going to come back and it's going to say you've either got a mutation, you've got heterozygous, homozygous, or no mutation at all. But
what do you do with it?
what do you do with it? So I wouldn't recommend you get your genetics tested unless you've got a good practitioner to interpret the results and give you actual recommendations. Because I've seen so many people come to me and like they're almost in tears to be like, I've got the motherfucker gene. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we should just supplement with a methyl B complex and make sure we've got enough folate there. And let's use them. We can't change that gene polymorphism, but let's just keep testing, your folate levels and your B12 levels, annually to make sure you've got a good status there, and you're eating, dark leafy green vegetables, and you're eating high quality grass fed beef, and we're making sure the levels are there, because that's what's most important. We use that information to change lifestyle factors to reduce, risk.
And when we hear you say something like this, I think and I say we the people, we the people. In general, a person, one assumes that this is just the way it's done. But if you go to, and again, I'm not throwing shade here, I'm just the pathway most people follow, is they go to their doctor and they get a blood test and their vitamin D is low, if vitamin D is checked. The obvious response is, here's more vitamin D. But if it's a mutation where it's actually how the docking of the ship is the issue here, and it's a gene issue, just throwing the supplement at it is not necessarily the cure. Maybe that was a bad example, but not necessarily the cure. So is this part of a normal screening or checkup that most people listening now would have had, or is this something extra you go looking for or ask for?
Genetic testing.
I know the answer, but I'm asking.
Yeah, genetic testing is not the normal screening. Like,
no.
You'll see really...
My question is why, I suppose. Why is this not part of... If it could be part of the answer for a person, why is it not?
I think we're getting there in the next decade, I'd say.
Okay.
I'd say what's going to happen eventually is we're going to be you can do it right now. You just have to do it privately.
Yeah.
But the issue is it's a little more expensive. You're paying 2, 3, 4, 5, even €600 for.
And it's like anything. When you do it, who's interpreting it? Who's going to help you with the actual?
No one's interpreting it.
No one's interpreting.
You're getting just a test result back, and you're getting all the genes and defects or the mutations.
So it's like Googling what's wrong with you, and you freak yourself out.
You go, what's this gene? I'll Google this. Yeah, exactly.
I have a runny nose. Oh my God, I'm dying.
Now, there are some practitioners out there that are doing genetic testing their clients because maybe their bloods are always coming back abnormal. They're trying to dig a bit deeper.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
But for the most part,
rare enough though.
Over here in Ireland, I would say so. But I'd say over the next 10 years, it's going to be a means of you go to your doctor, you might get because you don't have to do multiple genetic tests. Genetics don't change.
Yeah.
So if you get it once, you're done with it then for the rest of your life. But you're going to probably go upon the screening, you get a genetic test, you get your bloods done, and then the doctor will be able to look at your bloods and go, okay, the sugars are high. And then they're looking at the food log and they're going, the food log is perfect. So either this client's lying, or we can go to the genes. Oh, they have a SNP. So now their ability to shuttle sugar into the cell is impaired. So they might need to actually even have a lower carb diet or exercise more, or they need to improve their sleep. And it's going to be much more precision medicine or precision nutrition.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort, Robbie, to be fair.
Yeah, but we're getting there.
Okay.
Like
I'm being facetious there.
Yeah.
The question I had for you based on what you've just said there is, how common is our genetic issue? So 2% may be predetermined out of the other 98%.
Oh, yeah.
So when you see average population, how common is having some sort of genetic issue there?
Everyone is going to have some mutations or polymorphisms.
Wow.
You're not going to do a genetic test and not have some sort of mutation. Mutations are genetic adaptations to the environment.
Okay. And can they happen within the space of a generation, like father to son?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not talking, this is not an evolution thing. It's different in terms of your environment could directly, because actually we speak about this sometimes, and it's bring it back to stress. You as a stressed parent, particularly a mother, can pass along issues to the next generation, depending on your stress leading up to the conception, your stress during the pregnancy, and even your stress afterwards can all affect the child.
But when we think about, let's say, 100, 150, 200 years ago, you would probably, let's say, if you're Irish, your partner would also probably be Irish, and they would living within, let's say, a 50-kilometer region or distance, and your genetics would have been very, very similar. What's happening now is you've got a lot of Irish people immigrating to the United States or around the world, and vice versa, people coming over here and there and everywhere. And now what's happening is these gene pools are dipping in and out of where they actually originated from. So you're having these genes that were very advantageous to have in Ireland, but now they're in a different climate, a different environment, and it's not very advantageous, and vice versa. So that's what's happening, and we're getting these mix and matches and matching and so on. So that's why we're seeing so many weird mutations here, there, and everywhere. Because the MTHFR mutation, I mentioned that one because it's Ireland has one of the highest rates of that in the world.
Really?
Yeah. Now we go, okay, well, why do we have one of the rates of that? Why would that be beneficial? I can't think of it right now, but there might have possibly been some physiological benefit to having that.
Yeah, okay.
That
makes sense.
I can't recall right now, but there was a mutation to deal with, like, let's say, malaria that was beneficial to have. I don't know why it was.
For us?
No, not for us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But what happened was, if that gene ended up in Ireland or whoever else, it's now not beneficial.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I would definitely suggest if anyone's interested in their health, do check out some genetic testing out there. Or, there's a company called, I think it's called DNA Life.
Okay.
Or DNA Health. You can get your genetics test and it shows you these gene polymorphisms. There's tons on it, and it's the direction health is going in the future. So, and the thing is, I think it's going to be a case that if a child is born, they get a genetic test day one.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, well, we know this kid now had MTHFR, vitamin D mutation, or more insulin resistance, or lactose intolerance, or just easy stuff where it's like,
so you can shape the environment then for the
shape
child.
the environment straight away.
Yeah.
In my opinion, yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So we've touched on chemical, physical, environmental, genetic. We're missing, what's next? Financial stress obviously is a big one.
Yeah.
And again, we're just keep adding to this stress bucket. And financial stress is essentially, paying a mortgage, a job, keeping the lights on, the bills, and so on. But that can be a massive stress, and we all think about it. And these are the same people that are looking to, go to the gym at 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 p.m. because they can't go any earlier because they're in the job because they've got all these financial stressors.
Yeah.
And they're accumulating it. But that's obviously a big one, and I don't think we could argue that that's not a stress for most people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Especially when you've got kids or a family to look after as well. Then you're putting yourself second a lot of the time, or even third or fourth down the list, and you're trying to look after all these other people.
Yeah. And I think, like, listening to this, it will be easy to say that, like, these are all kind of, there's a lot of crossover, all these kind of things. And that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we said at the start, these are all just different.
Nothing in isolation.
Nothing. And they're all different identifiable triggers for this stress response in the body.
Yeah.
And it's this sustained stress response, this kind of chronic, because people hear this chronic stress. This is what it means, because everything you've mentioned so far, I suffer with all those things, you suffer with all those things, everybody suffers with all those things. So if that's happening all the time, we're not aware of them. And actually something, just to finish off that genetic point again, because you guys are always saying there is no such thing as the average person, now makes so much more sense, even more sense. Because if we all have some sort of genetic mutation based on our own environments, like literally our family and the house we lived in and the food we ate, but then there's no way that there can be health recommendations for me that are going to be the same for you.
Like, you're gonna get me going now when someone says, for a normal person,
I
would your recommendations? There is no normal. So you for a practitioner to answer a question, if it's a nutritional question or a diet or training question, there needs to be specifics.
Yeah.
And that's why when you're going to a trainer or a doctor or a functional medicine practitioner, they really should be doing a good screening and a really good medical history, not only on you. I'll ask about, are your parents still alive? Do they suffer from any illnesses, diabetes, anything like that? Any major surgeries? Are they on any medications? Are they healthy? Are they lean? Because their genetics are going to be very, very similar to yours, they can give you some insight what direction you might be heading if you're abusing your body.
Okay, yeah. And they've shaped the environment that you grew up in, which means you're going to have some biases that probably shape your own environment.
So good history taking is key.
I'm going to ask you a question now that I'm not asking you as Robbie the professional. I'm asking just for your opinion. In your industry, with the people you speak to, there are no average people. Everybody needs to be tested. Everything depends. Everything's individual. But do certain things emerge as, like, this is a pretty generally accepted way for most people to live a life or to eat, or do they emerge at any point, or is it constantly just really granular and really individual?
There's trends, yeah. So like, let's say the basic interventions or the foundation of the house, basic things we can do. Okay, well, we need to look at sleep, hydration, nutrition, and so on. And we need to obviously address them first before we go to any sort of silver bullet. And then once we've addressed them, we can go on to, okay, do they have any specific things we need to address? Okay, is it diabetes? Is it cholesterol issues? Is it low testosterone? Is it menopause? And then we can go into more precision care.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then after that kind of precision care, then we can go into, well, are the interventions working? Is it the same, better, or worse? And then can we do any sort of diagnostics to help improve that and get a little bit deeper through bloods, Dutch test, which is a hormonal test done in urine, genetic testing, and we can go deeper again. But how I'll generally recommend things, we got our basic nutrition interventions like high quality protein, have a protein goal per day or a calorie goal, macronutrients, making sure you've got a lot of diversity in your diet, a lot of fibrous foods, making sure you don't have any food intolerances, sensitivities, or allergies, because good food for one can be an intolerant food or a sensitive food for another. And then once we've got that, basic supplements, like sometimes it could be essential fatty acids, B complex, vitamin D. And then we go to more precision ones, like for instance, if someone's really stressed out, you might recommend ashwagandha or L-theanine, or let's say if someone needs to get going in the morning because they've got no energy, you might recommend some electrolytes in the morning, or amino acids because they're feeling down, they lack motivation. So it all depends. It's all individual. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's funny because like I know that's the answer, but I'm always like, there has to be some sort of cheat code here. If we're lazy and don't want to have to. But yeah, there's general things that most of us know we can try, and if it feels good, we should probably do more of it. Like drink a bit more water, go for a bit more of a walk or whatever. But like as soon as you start to try and actually figure it out, it depends.
So I got a message on Instagram recently, and it was very, very vague question from a coach I know. Hopefully they're not listening. But they said, Robbie, what's the highest vitamin D level I can take before creating toxicity? And I'm just thinking in my head, like, that's the wrong question to ask. Like, I can't give you a short
answer.
Kind
of a weird question, is it?
Yeah, like, what's the highest dose I should take?
Before it gets poisoned.
Yeah, but like, why are you looking at the highest dose? Why are you not looking at the most effective dose?
Yeah.
And then why do you want to take it? What's your issue? Okay, that's your issue. Okay. Have you had any levels done? What's your environment right now? How's your nutrition? Are you doing anything else? There's so many different questions to ask.
I sent you a question like that once. I can't remember what it was about. Maybe
I don't remember this.
I'll never send you a question like that again because I got back papers and I got back everything. I can't remember. Maybe it was about protein. It's like, I'll never ask this man an open-ended question like that again.
And like, I'm not trying to make things complicated, but they need to be very personal and very precise to your situation right now and then and there.
Yeah. No, you're dead right. Yeah, this is why I love it. I love these conversations because there is no. Like James was in here. We were laughing beforehand. Like there's no yes or no answers here.
No, unfortunately not.
And they don't exist. And that's frustrating for many people because we're sold the dream nowadays. Everything is one-click wonders.
Yeah.
But your own health, you have to take responsibility for your own health if you're interested in actually improving it. You have to take.
And the first thing is, like we talked about all these various stressors. The first thing you can do is being aware that there's an issue or there's area of opportunity.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time I'll have clients say, my diet's good, my sleep is good. I was chatting to a client the other day who, wakes up in the middle of the night 10 to 13 times, which is, he knew it was an issue, but maybe he didn't realize the significance of the issue.
Yeah.
Once you understand the significance of something, then you go, okay, this is a problem. Now we need to devise a plan and some steps to where I want to be. It's called a bridging model. Where I am now, where I need to be, that bridge over, how am I going to get there?
Yeah. That's why I love these conversations because you don't have to do any of this. Do whatever you want. But there's lots on the table for most of us. There's loads on the table, and a lot of it's very simple. And like we talk a lot about like supplementation and different things about it, but most of us, me included, are not even doing the basics to the maximum of our ability.
I'm a geek when it comes to all these nutritional supplements or nootropics or adaptogens. I love it all.
Yeah.
But sometimes you've got to take a step back and go, well,
get a bit more sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But
people hate hearing that.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah, because it's boring and it's repetitive. Like you want to achieve anything, in my experience, it's going to be the boring, repetitive stuff that gets you the biggest results, and the smallest gains, if any, are going to come from like someone wants to take creatine. They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they're not getting decent calories in, they're not training properly, but the creatine.
What's the best time to take it? Yeah.
But when should I take my creatine? Is it 4 or 5 grams after a loading phase? How much water should I drink? It's like we're kind of missing the point here. Yeah, there's benefit there, but only when stacked on top of
totally
this pyramid.
And when people come to see me, I kind of joke about it. I go, I'm like Google Maps for you. I'm a facilitator where I
Do you do an
direct
Asian
you.
accent?
No, I don't. But I say, I'm going to get you to where you need to be
Yeah.
the fastest route possible,
Okay. Yeah.
provided you're going to give me 100% adherence.
Okay.
Now, if you want to adhere to it 80%, well, we got to
Divert a little bit.
divert a little bit here and
Yeah,
there.
yeah. That's a good way of
Or
looking
so
at
there's
it.
going to be some roadblocks as well on the way as well. You know, you might go off course, but they need to want to make a change as well.
Yeah.
And that's a big issue. Like, but a lot of time when people come to see me, they're already invested. They already want to make a change.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can remember where we are. We had chemical. We had physical.
Yeah.
We had environmental.
Genetic.
We had genetic. We had financial. That's 5.
Yeah.
So you mentioned religious stress to me.
Yeah. So when I learned about all these different types of stress, religious stress can be one as well. And that kind of is, they're all intertwined like we talked about, but religious stress could be if your partner might, be religious in some manner and you're not, and, it might have an impact on your relationships. It might also be, and depending on, what religion you follow, if that impacts how you eat or your routine.
Oh,
so
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't talk about it that much with the clients I see.
It seems kind of a weird one now because many people listen to this podcast probably just because of the generation that we're in now. Religion is not a big part of our life here anymore. And obviously it is for some people. And in some cultures it's integral, but for us, not so much as it used to be. So it's interesting it's included with such big things like environmental and chemical.
Yeah, and maybe I should even say sometimes lack of religious stress or lack of
I love it.
faith or something like that as well, without going to, out there.
No, because you said this to me before and it's really important. So I think you should go into
like
this.
I think you need to have some direction as well, or some outlet, whether it's I believe in something. I think people like that tend to do a lot better, tend to have lesser stress or better qualities of life than individuals that don't.
Yeah. The way I think about it, I don't want to use the word spiritual because it has so many dirty connotations. I think about faith.
Have a belief or something.
A belief or a faith. If you have, and it could be faith, it can be anything, but there's a belief inside you that there is more than just you. And that could be a belief in people. It could be a belief in energies. It could be a belief in crystals, or it could be a belief in God, or whatever. But having that, I know from speaking to people in the spiritual, the faith, the religious, the scientific, the health, the medical world, that I don't know what it is, but what you've just described there, I hear all the time. It improves outcomes across the board.
Yeah, and you think about like with people, like I'm not very religious at all. I wouldn't say I'm religious at all, actually, period. But let's say people that go to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a social thing
social,
as well.
it's communal.
And it's purpose driven.
Yeah.
And you have a purpose. I'm going because I'm supporting everyone else there.
Yeah.
So having a tribe can be very, very beneficial. When we talk about having a tribe, social isolation. And social is another stress we haven't touched on. Social stress, being isolated, is one of the biggest issues I think we have, especially we've had over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Big time. But that can be a worse risk factor for overall mortality than smoking, than drinking alcohol, and drugs. Humans are not, we're not creatures that do well in isolation. We're social creatures. So we need to interact physically. We need to speak to people eye to eye, touch, communicate. We're not built to be alone. So having people let's say for instance, in your later years, if you have the death of a loved one, that can be a massive stress in your body. And you see people all the time, oh, such and such has died of heartbreak.
Yeah.
Because now they've got lack of purpose.
Apparently that happens to elephants.
I think it happens to everyone.
Yeah, maybe. I just heard about elephants.
Thought that was going to be a joke there. Yeah.
No, not a joke.
Elephants specifically. Okay.
But,
we have no references for that, but check it out.
Zero references, by the way, bro science. But but no, sorry, I cut you off there.
I think it would happen to most creatures, I would presume, but I could be wrong. But where was I? So
sorry, I completely ruined your flow there.
But
apologies, listeners.
Yeah, when you the death of a loved one, then all of a sudden the person's isolated. That can have a massive impact on someone's health because they haven't got a want or a will to live. So you see, not most, but some elderly women will go for coffee or tea to chat with, the friend they have from maybe mass or wherever else it is. But men in particular, we're not really good at getting our emotions across or being open with others. So you see the introduction of these, I don't know what they're called. It's where all men will come together.
Like men's sheds.
Men's sheds, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
where it's like, it's just a nice place to have social interaction.
Yeah.
Because these men that typically would be socially isolated can, that's obviously going to be a big stress because we're suppressing our emotions then as well.
Yeah.
And unhealthy suppression of emotion is not very good on our cardiovascular system at all.
Yeah.
Because now we're suppressing emotion can actually have a suppression on our endocrine system and everything. Can actually have it can literally manifest on a blood test then.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
This is what I found so interesting the first time you said this to me. Is like it's so, because you're giving it such weight. This idea of, and it's very difficult to make it tangible, but just like you described there, having this level of faith or purpose or belief or tribe probably influences everything else you do in your life, because that sense of purpose will make you want to go to bed and get out of bed and eat good food and feel a little bit better and train to be a bit more physically capable and to contribute to society, and all these different things are potentially being driven by that sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose could be linked with your faith or your belief or your tribe or your community. So it's almost the most important thing to have, because you're not going to do any of the other things unless you feel like doing it. And in many cases, obviously, there's the argument that if you have low energy or cortisol's off in the morning, you don't feel like doing things. But sometimes you can override that. Now, I don't want to get down the word of motivation. I know this whole idea of motivation is a myth, and I would subscribe to that as well. It's all about the systems and stuff.
Or habits.
Or habits. But you're not going to develop good habits if you don't give a shit. Like, if you're just nihilistic about everything because you have no purpose or no meaning behind anything, none of that stuff matters.
Yeah.
So you're not going to do any of it. So potentially the most important driver of mortality risks or factors is having some sense of belief or purpose, and that could be connection or
Totally.
religion. Yeah.
And we talked about all the various types of stress, and we talked about all the problems. We haven't really talked about, steps of solutions or going forward from that.
Is that the last one? Was that 6? Because did you mention 7? It wasn't social, was it?
Social was, yeah.
Was social
so
one?
we mentioned that there, yeah.
That kind of gets linked in.
Yeah, exactly.
We just said that, okay.
So you mentioned purpose. Purpose, structure, and tribe are 3 major factors that can influence a lot. So having a purpose, which is, I want to improve my overall health because I just want to have a long, fulfilling, life and high quality of life. Or it might be, I want to do stuff with my family or whatever it is. You need to have a purpose. You need to have that, or direction.
Yeah.
If you have no direction, you need to find direction. A lot of my clients, I'll ask them, especially trainers, I'll go, what do you do for fun? And they go, I work out. I go, no. Do you have an identity outside of the gym? And they look at me with a blank stare. They don't have an identity other than, such a trainer. And their outlet is just training 6 to 7 days of the week, posting on Instagram, and that's just them. You need to have an outlet.
Is this coaches now?
Coaches,
okay,
coaches specifically, I would say.
Yeah.
And training and I only had this conversation with a client today. We were talking about addiction. And what is addiction? I don't know the actual definition, but for me, it's having some sort of habit that is having an unhealthy result on your life. It could be having a negative effect on relationships, your physiological health, your cardiovascular health, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think there's a level of compulsion in it as well. It's something
compulsion,
as a compulsion.
So you can be obviously addicted to training.
Yeah.
But we talk about the benefits of it. Like people train maybe 4 or 5 days a week, but people could say, you're addicted to that, but it's actually having a positive impact in your life. You're building relationships. You're able to work better. Your mindset is better for your mental and your physical health and so on. But these people that are training excessively and they don't have an outloader in the gym, do they have a dog? Do you walk their dog? Do you have a partner? When's the last time you've gone out for a coffee with your friend or a walk or whatever it is, bowling or snooker or pool or swimming? You need to have an outlet outside the gym. One of my good friends in the United States, he trains dogs. He loves animals.
Cool.
Adam's recently gotten into, one of my colleagues and friends has gotten into just Sunday hikes with his partner. Stuff like that. You need to have something.
Yeah.
So if you don't have something, pick something. I would have, one of my recommendations can simply be just buy a jigsaw. That's where you could start. If you really have nothing, just start.
I don't know why my mind went to the power tool straight away there.
Yeah, no, could stuff like that. Yeah,
as in not like a puzzle, but a jigsaw for cutting.
Oh, okay. I think
the jigsaw,
the man shed stuff. Yeah. But like something like that, okay. Oh, that's where what I do to unwind and relax and, and do something.
Yeah.
Or, chess clubs or something, but you need to have something outside
Yeah.
the gym. I'm speaking specifically for those trainers there.
No, you're giving general recommendations for
Yeah,
people.
general, everyone out there. Yeah. But that one for sure.
Okay.
Have a purpose, have something outside the gym. But then, okay, now we need to have some structure. I'm someone that strives and does really, really well with structure. And if you don't have structure, you don't have habits, you're not gonna
You're
last.
a leaf on the wind, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I've seen like images on Instagram, you see floating around, you see motivation, and you see like a cup where it's full. You're like full of motivation, and it's drained, and it's half full, and it's quarter full. In motivation, you're gonna have days that it's gonna be high, days that it's gonna be low. It's easy to go to the gym when you feel absolutely unreal. You're after watching Chris Bumstead videos, and you're pumped up, ready to go. You're like ready to lift. But then there's days
the hoodie reveal.
Yeah, exactly.
The pump cover off, yeah.
Exactly, the music blaring and everything. And then there's days where it's lashing rain, it's dark, it's cold.
Yeah, which is most days.
Yeah, in Ireland. And you're like, oh, I do not want to go in there for 4 sets of 10, this, that, and the other. But that's like I say to my clients, these are the days that really make the difference. It's easy to come in when you're motivated.
Yeah.
So you need to have habits, you need to have that, Simon Sinek, have that why.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? So like, because that makes a difference. So have habits, or like another word for habits, having that kind of structure where you have to book it into your calendar. Like you as a client, okay, I'm going to the gym this day or every week, or I eat at this hour, or wherever it is, but you need to have that structure.
Yeah.
Because I say to my clients all the time, the more the room for error, the more it's going to occur. The more, so if there's room for error, you're going to fuck it up.
Yeah.
So you got to adjust. So we talked about like habits and structure, then also having your social environment, having your support factors there.
Yeah.
So you need to have people close to you. Get rid of those energy vampires, the people that are stressing you out. If I ask the audience now, just, okay, make a fist with your hand. Can you think up 5 people in your life that you're grateful for?
Oh, I thought you were going to say you want to punch.
No, that you want to punch. That's a good one as well. We used to do a hand for that. But
only 2 hands for that.
5 people you're really grateful for, you appreciate, and you really, love and appreciate your life. Like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you think of 5? Hopefully you can. If you can't, okay, maybe you need to change some things in your life. But if you can think of 5, then go, when's the last time I've seen them, or I've done something nice for them, or made an effort for them?
Yeah.
So that's a big one as well, because people are in the rat race where they're just working, and they forget a lot of the time what they're working for.
100%, yeah.
So I understand it. Like, you're working because you want to provide for your family, or you got to pay bills and whatever else. But what's your quality of life at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And that's a massive one. Yeah.
Another Chris Williamson shout out. People can be sick of me referencing him, but he does talk about this quite a lot in terms of we are so caught up sacrificing the thing that makes us happy to try and get the thing that makes us happy. I've butchered it there, but essentially we spend so much time focusing on this thing that's eventually supposed to make us happy, but we lose sight of what's actually right here making us happy. What I really like about this, Robbie, is that last 5 minutes of the conversation there is what most people are familiar with and will have heard before, completely out of context, on the motivational quotes and on Instagram, and the coaches all talking about this. But the 45 minutes previous to that, you've just explained why that last 5 minutes is so important, because all of the other stuff we can have a look at, like the genetic SNPs and the environmental stresses and changing our diet and all that kind of stuff, it's all super important and will all absolutely help. But without that last 5 minutes there, that sense of purpose and connection on the why and the tribe and the reason for doing it all, you're not going to do any of it. And the way that you've kind of described it there is now we know of all the things that we can be aware of, but they don't really matter until we can figure out our why, until we can sit down and say, right, have I got people around me? Have I got support structure here? Have I got purpose in my life? Right, now that I do, if you do, amazing, great. Here's all the things I can have a look at now.
And that's literally chapter 1. Chapter 1 was the introduction there.
Yeah.
These are all the stresses. These are some things you can do about it. Chapter 2 is, okay, let's talk about the nutritional stress, where what if someone has a food allergy? What if someone is a diabetic? What if someone has low testosterone? Now it even becomes more, precision.
Yeah.
Precision nutrition, or precision, recommendations and so on, because each one of those stressors we talked about is all going to require a personalized approach to helping you address it.
Yeah.
Again, from there.
As Robbie Bennett, how good are you at applying? You have the knowledge.
Yeah.
You have the experience.
Yeah.
You see this. You literally help other people with this. How do you find integrating this stuff into your own life? Has it made a change for you? Do you apply it? Is it difficult? Do you have challenges?
Everyone's going to have challenges, yeah.
Yeah.
So first off, information without application is useless.
Yeah.
So if anything, you need to have takeaways. You need to be able to apply one thing at a time. So done is better than perfect. So stop striving for perfect. If you can do just one thing, like if you were to, let's say, sit on one of my clients, you'd be saying, oh, he could do so much more with that client. So much more, more recommendations, ways you can use this supplement, that supplement, however else. But it might be just like, okay, let's just get you going for a walk with your partner after dinner. Let's get you eating a bit more protein on the plate. And let's turn off Netflix at 9:00, where it's just like done is better than perfect. And then when we improve that, we're at step 1. We're walking up the staircase. What's step 2? What's step 3? Till we get to that eventual goal.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to practice what you preach to some extent. Like, when we talk about those stress, sometimes just you're going to get, a train smack you in the face with some sort of stress where it's like, well, right, okay, I didn't expect that, or, something's going to get in your way.
I think this is the point, though, isn't it? Because the challenge is inevitably coming. So we cannot control that challenge.
No,
but what we can control is how prepared we are.
Yes.
So if your bucket is 99% full and you get a 50% train coming in that's going to add, and you're up at 149% all of a sudden, I know these numbers don't really add up, but you get the visual I'm trying to paint here.
Yeah, but you also need to be aware.
Yeah, 100%.
That stress smacks you in the face.
Yeah.
Because there's the saying, like, your body, if you're stressed out,
body keeps
your
score.
Body is going to tell you.
Yeah.
It's going to tell you it's stressed. And it's going to tell you it's stressed in the form of pain. Okay. If your joints are aching after the gym, it's going to tell you it's stressed in the form of fatigue, jitters, even depression, or mood issues. It's going to tell you. And if you don't listen to it, it's going to tell you even louder.
Yeah.
And you see all these people with massive issues, okay? Like men complaining with libido issues, or women libido issues, or mood issues, hair falling out, dry skin, digestive issues. Like, how many people do you know that are suffering from digestive issues where they can't tolerate foods? I see it all the time. Because your body is speaking to you right now, and you're just not listening. So I think people need to be more aware of what their body's trying to translate to them.
Yeah.
And then they need to, almost like get out your health dictionary. Well, my body's saying this, or my health translator. What does it mean, and what do I do about it?
Yeah, yeah. And instead of approaching it as if, right, we have a fire here now, instead of approaching it trying to stamp out that fire, well, who fucking started the fire? Why is there a fire here in the first place? Like, why did we start this fire? Because our approach really is to stamp out this fire, and then we stamp out this fire, and we just keep stamping out fires. But like, someone's starting all these fires. Yeah, let's catch that little prick and fucking kill him.
Yeah, wouldn't it be a lot easier to just stop the fire from happening in the first place, rather than having a power hose installed into the house?
Exactly, yeah. And just for people who might not know, with my weird fire story there, I'm talking about stuff like if you have gut issues and then you go to the doctor and they give you medicine for your gut issues or whatever, that might not necessarily be the right approach at the start. Why do we have gut issues would be my first question. Is it one of these 7 or a combination of these 7, which is most likely?
And I'm not anti,
I'm not anti
drug or anything like that. Like,
but we're very quick to jump to that. Like, I mean, when I say
it's emergency care.
It's emergency care. And I'm not, when I say we, I'm not talking about the professionals. I'm talking about us as people. We just want to solve this problem right now, as opposed to, like, as we said earlier, taking responsibility and figuring out, okay, I have to generate some awareness around why this is happening. But that's just difficult for people, man.
Yeah, it's difficult to navigate. I 100% agree.
And don't think you can sidestep my question now with a little answer. How do you find, with all this information, because it can be overwhelming, do you find that you do take an approach of simply? Do you apply a lot of this stuff to your own life?
Oh, yeah, of course. But the basics are the basics, and you can't beat the basics.
Yeah.
So, like, simple things, my environment, okay. I love to get outdoors. My partner, I've got dogs, so walking dogs, like, me and my partner are very active. So either whether it's in the gym or just going for a walk and Ticknock or Hoth or, the Toolbag Lighthouse or whatever it is, just going around, stuff like that. I like that as a form of recharging, being around people that energize you, which we talked about. Having an outlet, whether like over Christmas, I always get a jigsaw every Christmas. So just like
a puzzle now, not a
jigsaw puzzle. So it might be superhero related or whatever else, but it's just something to do.
I love a good jigsaw. Yeah,
whether we're getting away from just the TV, and something like that. Challenge the brain can be that. Go play pool or darts or bowling or go to the arcade, whatever.
Do you know why I
have
asked this
fun.
question, right? Because sometimes when we hear like the likes of yourself or Owen or people like you or Adam talking, we assume that, okay, he's saying all this thing, Robbie must go home and hang upside down in a dark room with IVs attached to him and
With
red
red light
lights
therapy
and
on.
red
Yeah,
light
yeah,
therapy
yeah,
and
yeah.
wear glass. It's like, no, he's doing the stuff he's telling you is working. All the other stuff is the extra, and you have the expertise and to go there with the precision care.
Yeah.
But it's like 99, probably, I'm just going to probably here, 99% of the stuff you do with your clients is the basics. 99% of the stuff you do with you is the basics, and you build on that.
Yeah, and there might be some, functional tests in there, whether it's a allergy test, a Dutch test, or hormonal, but like it's all complementary to the basics.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate that the people I work with, like, I really get on with Owen and Adam and so on. So they're people that energize me.
Yeah.
And I understand
Which is massively important.
Yeah, and I understand that there's going to be people out there that listen and going, well, that's not the same for me. I actually can't stand the person who's sitting next to me on the desk at whoever I'm working with and so on.
Yeah.
But okay, well, we can't get rid of them, or you can't really quit your job. So what can we do? Okay, well, that's one thing to stress you out. What's the thing that you're doing to unwind?
Yeah.
So can you go with 1-to-1 ratio? So whatever else it is.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, so our final takeaway from this, because there is one piece of general advice we can give people on this, which is to sit down and give yourself some time to try and generate that awareness for yourself.
Yep.
Like you've just given us 7 areas there that we can have a little look at ourselves. Don't get hyper stressed about that. Focus on that first step. Look at look at the people around you. Look at your relationships, the quality of life. How do you feel? And actually look at that.
And stress is not bad.
And it's not bad. Yeah.
It's just again, stress is anything that takes the body out of homeostasis.
Yeah.
That stress response, sustained stress response, can be bad. And we can measure the stress response in many ways. We can measure it subjectively. How do you feel? Are you tired? Subjectively is if you're so stressed that your hair is falling out, well, we need to do something about that. We can measure it objectively via tests. If you were getting a test done, I wouldn't suggest blood tests, because blood tests are a snapshot picture of where you are at that exact minute in time. And the best way to measure someone's stress response is at least over a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
So there's hormonal tests you can do if you wanted to go really into depth to really understand what was going on, where you can see your cortisol cycle over 24 hours. So you could see in the mornings if it's flat, or if you're getting that nice cortisol spike in the morning, what's giving you energy, and you can see it drop throughout the day.
Is this where we're looking at a process C and process S? Would that be crossover there in terms of cortisol and sleep and energy balances and curves and stuff?
When I think about cortisol, the one antagonistic hormone to cortisol would be melatonin.
Okay.
So we should see an inverse relationship between cortisol and melatonin.
Yeah.
So as cortisol descends, we see melatonin increase and so on. But they're like the Dutch, if anyone does want to kind of research a little bit further and really see it objectively, the Dutch test, which stands for Droid Urine Testing of Complete Hormones or Comprehensive Hormones. But that's a nice way to start, because it literally shows you the whole pattern over your day.
Okay. And
then you can base recommendations on that as well, because sometimes people are not very acceptant of me saying to them, no, you're stressed, you're tired, and sometimes you need to see a piece of paper and you need to see that number flatlined, and you need to see the normal, and you're below the normal, you're above the normal, and so on.
Yeah. And that's a perspective piece, I think, for people as well. As like, I think Owen described it as the phone charger thing. Most people think that they're at 80 or 90%.
Yep.
But that's just because that's what's normal for you. It doesn't mean that that's what's potentially you, or what's normal for, or should be normal for a population.
100%. Yeah.
Most of us are at like 30 or 40%.
100%. And, when people talk about stress as well, they're talking about the adrenal fatigue and so on. My adrenals are fatigued.
Yeah.
Because that stress hormone comes from our adrenal glands.
Yeah.
But our adrenals don't get fatigued. Our adrenal gland is producing less hormone, cortisol, which gives us that zap or oomph in the morning, because it's trying to say to you, calm the hell down.
Yeah.
It's it's your body's response to saying, you're doing too much. We need to reduce your cortisol right now because you're doing far too much. So the first stage in adrenal physiology would be high levels of cortisol, because you've got to stress. You got attacked by a lion, your boss is shouting at you, or you're in it could be a car accident or whatever. High levels of stress. Provided we have adequate adaptation, we have them levels drop back down to baseline, and we're good.
Yeah.
But what happens is, if you're stressed out financially for months and months on end, then we have those high levels of cortisol. And then eventually what happens is we have that burnout, where our body is just adapting to that, saying we can't have these levels at this high for any longer. We have to drop them. We need to, because you're not listening.
Yeah.
We need to force you into fatigue, tiredness to attempt to restore you. And what do people do when they're tired?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah.
And you see it like Monster. I'm not against coffee. I'm not against.
But these are just things.
pre-workouts.
They're just tools. But
Yeah.
it's the abuse of these
They're
things.
being misused.
Or
in my
the
opinion.
misuse, maybe not the abuse, the misuse of these things. Yeah, 100%. And I think you described it lovely there. Most people, if they got chased by a lion, would be like, fuck, I got chased by a lion. That was pretty stressful. But
You
the
hear your
fact,
mates and it's over then. You
Yeah.
come back down. Cool story for you lads.
cool story. But
Yeah.
the fact is that the lion is now so perceptible. It's now maybe a bad relationship with your boss. Maybe he didn't come in roaring at you, but every day you feel a bit uncomfortable in there, or you feel the pressure of the job, or like you were saying, the pressure of the money that's just insidious over time. So because we can't perceive it, we don't not think that we're stressed.
Yeah, I think you said low grade stressor. So initially, or not initially, but most people when they think of stress think fight or flight. Or
Yeah.
flight. So fight someone, run from someone, or freeze.
Yeah.
But there's also your tend and befriend.
Tend and befriend.
Yes.
Do they all rhyme?
I know, right? It's easy. It should be easier to remember, but tend and befriend. And men can be a bit more selfish creatures than women. I don't know if you'd agree with that. We can be. And that can sometimes be a beneficial.
I don't want to start that conversation because it opens up another 3
Yeah,
hours.
yeah.
Of,
So sometimes, not generally, but that can also be a beneficial thing because sometimes we don't care about other people.
Yeah.
And then with some women, you tend to befriend, they're looking after everyone else
yeah.
but themselves.
That's a real Irish thing as well. An Irish
Yes,
mammy thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
So they're prioritizing everyone but themselves. There's that tend to be friends. So they're stressing out about everyone to the point that it's actually doing some harm to themselves.
Yeah.
So what I'll say to my clients a lot of the time is we have got number 1, number 2, and number 3. So I draw like a little stick man. And that little stick man is you. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
I did. I saw you do this before, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the middle. On the outside of the stick man, we've got number 2.
Yeah.
And I'll write your friends and your family. And then on like the outer circle completely, I write number 3. So we got 1, 2, 3, and then I write ATOFs.
All the other fuckers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of time, all those other fuckers are our first priority.
Yeah. And it
Okay.
works inwards as opposed to.
Yeah. So we have what I call an implosion rather than explosion. We should prioritize ourselves and then our friends and our family. And then if we have any time left over, we can chat to all those other fuckers.
Yeah.
And that's the explosive. We're producing energy and it's energizing our life. But a lot of time we have an implosive lifestyle where we're looking after all those other fuckers. And then we have sometimes, if we're lucky, some time for our partner or sometime for our kids or sometimes for our dog or our friends. Oh no, when's the last time you text your mate and you go, oh, I haven't got time, I'm flat out.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you are last. Now you're looking after your diet, your exercise. And now I finally have time for a half an hour a run or a gym session. And it's just not a way to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I think for the vast majority of us, there's just a guilt attached to that. It's a guilt thing. So it's not that we're being lazy or selfish. It's that it's the opposite. There's a guilt to looking after ourselves first. And there's all these cliches like put your own oxygen mask on first and all that. But I am a huge subscriber to that model now because, and I said this before, I know that when I don't take care of myself, I'm shit for everybody else.
Yeah, but
my kids, my missus, everything.
It's almost like you're shamed for making yourself priority, but you need to make yourself priority.
100%.
Because if you're not a priority, you can't be a better partner.
Yeah.
Can't be a better husband, better wife, a better friend, a better colleague because you're drained. So it's not selfish to put yourself first. If you put yourself first, you're going to be a better version of yourself for everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Fact.
Yeah.
Mr. Bennet. I think that's a nice place because if we go any deeper on anything else, we're adding 2 hours to this podcast. I think that's a nice place for that little package of stress there.
Yeah.
The way I would kind of wrap this up is that is an amazing intro for people to start generating this awareness. Just start having the conversation with yourself. Anything more than this, we're probably I'm going to have to get you back on for 7 more podcasts to go deep into each one of those particular factors.
And the purpose of this is not really, well, it can be, you've generated some answers.
Yes.
But also to generate some questions that you might not have to actually consider.
It's the questions.
Yeah.
Ask more questions, empower yourself, and man, the outcomes are so much better. But it was you saying that to me years ago. I was like, that's so interesting that you give so much weight to that, and now I understand why, because it literally is the driver for everything else. Yeah. Robbie, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Let's not let it be however many years it's been
Yeah,
since you've
yeah,
been on the
I know,
podcast again. We'll have you back on very soon to talk about some more of these topics, but really appreciate your input, your time as always, and I hope everybody learned something about themselves there.
Thanks for having me.
Chat to you soon.